She survived the bombs in Syria, but nearly died just for wearing a uniform in her own country. Late afternoon. On a deserted highway in Savannah, a silver SUV sits motionless by the roadside. A black woman in a neat military uniform is handcuffed behind her back. Blood seeps from her temple, trickling down the medals pinned to her chest. Her head bows, lightly touching the car hood, where the American flag reflects in the matte paint. Her name is Amara Johnson. Army Major. Deployed twice, no infractions, no bad record. That day, she was simply driving home. 2 officers stand behind her. One growls. Probably fake. Skin color fits, but the uniform doesn't. Her fingers tighten. A silver ring catches the fading light. Click. A signal is sent. And at that very moment, America began to shake. But before help arrived, the worst had yet to happen. To them, she wasn't a soldier, just a black woman in clothes that didn't belong to her. She didn't scream, didn't resist. She just stood there, hands cuffed, blood trickling down her jawline, eyes fixed on the cracked pavement. The gaze of someone who had stitched wounds on the battlefield, yet was humiliated on her own soil. The wind blew strands of hair into her face. Still, she stood tall, not because it didn't hurt, but because she had long grown used to pain. They asked, "What black major drives an old car like that?" They laughed. "Must have borrowed that outfit from someone." They didn't know. The woman in cuffs had earned a medal for saving 6 lives during a mortar attack. She said nothing, but her eyes spoke volumes, and when she looked up, the world began to shift. Still, they didn't know. She was the one who wrote the protocol that would erase their arrogance forever. That morning, Amara stepped out of her promotion ceremony, medal gleaming, smile still halfway born. Her family had flown from New Jersey to Savannah, eager to welcome their daughter in her most formal uniform. On the empty highway, her silver SUV cruised softly through the golden dusk. Sunlight passed through the windshield, reflecting the words U.S. Army on her shoulder. She played a voice message from her mom. The smell of stew seemed to pour out of the speakers. Then, flashing red and blue lights lit up her rearview mirror. A cold command. A suspicious knock on her window. Minutes later, the metal on her chest hit the hood as she was forced down, blood soaking into her collar. From war zone to home, only to find the battle line now runs through her own land. She was still standing, but the world around her began to tilt. A flashing light, a lone siren wail. The patrol car closed in behind, then veered to cut off Amara's SUV. She didn't speed up or swerve, just watched the needle stop at 63 on a 65-zone road. She pulled over, placed her hands firmly on the wheel, just as her father had taught, "Don't give them a reason." But reasons, they always have in their eyes. As the window rolled down, a cold male voice barked, no greeting. "License and registration, now." She handed over her military ID and the vehicle's army plates. His eyes skimmed them, not reading, not checking, just a scowl, then a smirk. "You think I'm buying this?" There was no reason to doubt her, but they needed none. To doubt a black woman in uniform. He didn't read her name, didn't notice her rank, didn't ask the basic question, "Do you know why you were stopped?" Only silence, and a gaze that held no effort to hide its judgment. Not the look of law enforcement, but of someone hunting for a reason to assert power over a body unlike his own. The second officer approached the passenger side, hand already resting on his gun. No need to chamber around. The threat was already in his eyes. She stayed calm, every word clear, respectful. "Officer, I'm Major Amara Johnson. Just left Fort Stewart, and I have all necessary documents." The only reply was a cold snort. "This plate's suspicious. We're tracking a stolen uniform case." No proof, no evidence, just her skin and her uniform were enough for suspicion. But what they didn't know was that look had just triggered a tidal wave heading their way. Amara remained seated, her body steel-forged from thousands of hours of drills and deployments. But the chill didn't come from the breeze. It came from the tone hurled at her face. "That's not a driver's license." The officer flipped her military ID between his fingers like a toy. "You have any idea how many people fake these to get past us?" Without waiting for a response, he glanced at his partner and nodded. "Out of the car." She frowned. "I've committed no offense, and I still haven't been told why I was stopped." Boot stepped closer. "You're obstructing law enforcement. Now move." Amara looked down at her hands, still resting exactly where they should be. No shaking, no panic, but a pounding ache had begun in her temple. Amara stepped out of the vehicle like a soldier stepping into hostile territory. Unarmed, unsupported, with only dignity as her armor. She stood tall, eyes forward, even as the two officers circled her like a wounded animal. A gust flipped a flap of her uniform, revealing her row of medals. None of them looked. Or they chose not to. No explanation, no record, only searing stares and clipped commands. "Hands on the hood." She hesitated. Just a second, but it was enough for a hand to fall to a weapon. She placed her hands on the hot metal, the sensation dragging her back to a distant memory. The first time she was followed in a grocery store at 14. No reason, no apology, only silence. A silence heavy enough to crush. The moment her hands touched the hood, a yank from behind came like a battlefield rope pull. A rough arm grabbed her elbow, twisted it back. No warning, no command. Amara lost balance. Her forehead slammed against the cold, hard metal with a heavy thud in her skull. She felt a warm wetness at her temple. Blood. No scream, no groan. Just closed her eyes for 1 second. To hold on to the last shred of humanity in the face of brute behavior. "You're resisting," the officer barked. But Amara hadn't moved, except to stay perfectly still. Her other hand was clamped, cold steel biting into her wrist like it wanted to reach her bones. Behind her, a quiet chuckle slipped out. "They always think the uniform hides everything." And in every drop of blood sliding down, a sequence of command codes waited to be released. Her forehead still pressed against the hood, vision blurred with blood. Amara felt a slight tremble in her palm, not from fear, but from calculation. She pressed her thumb against the inside of her silver ring, a piece of jewelry, seemingly. In truth, it was an emergency trigger she had designed 2 years ago. 3 short presses, 2 long. An encrypted signal sequence. No one around her noticed a thing. Outside, the murmurs got filthier, a scoffing voice. "Probably got in through a diversity program. These types love to play the part." Amara closed her eyes. Coordinates transmitted. Protocol activated. A military-grade response had been triggered, not because of her rank, but because her skin tone had buried too many others in silence. No sirens, no engine roars. Just a black SUV rolling silently to the roadside, parking a few meters behind the cruiser. Then another, no license plates, no logos, but anyone in the field could tell they weren't civilians. 3 people stepped out, dark suits, non-reflective shoes, earpieces in place. One nodded gently toward Amara. It wasn't a nod to a suspect, but to a commander. The 2 officers still hadn't noticed, still arguing whether to throw her in the trunk or drive her in. Amara, though bleeding from her temple, allowed herself a faint smile. The system had responded. Protocol 73 was operating exactly as she designed it, and when the 4th vehicle arrived, the entire atmosphere shifted. Suddenly, irreversibly. "3 minutes post-activation. Pinpoint location and alert. Next 7 minutes. Establish perimeter and initiate satellite surveillance." Amara knew every second of the timeline because she was the one who wrote it, back when no one cared to document these hidden incidents. She created Protocol 73 to protect soldiers like herself from unchecked authority that left no trace. And now it was protecting her. In utter silence. Agents quietly took their positions around the scene. A military-grade drone had already locked eyes from above, The cops hadn't noticed, still thinking they were dealing with a mouthy girl. Amara stood cuffed, dried blood on her cheek, but in her mind, a clock was ticking backwards. 14 minutes to go, then nothing could be covered up again. But before the system launched full intervention, a childhood memory emerged. One that made this confrontation about more than just her. Her face against the cold car hood, blood dripping from her temple. But in her mind, it wasn't the present she heard. It was the echo of police boots across a mall floor, 18 years earlier. 14-year-old Amara, in a red hoodie, stood at the children's book aisle with 2 white classmates. Only she was followed. Only she was asked to empty her pockets. Only she had her name recorded, even though she had taken nothing. Her father arrived then. Worn, uniform on, walking straight in, eyes sharp like blades. "I fought for this country, and now you're interrogating my daughter because of her skin color?" Silence from the police. No apology. Amara learned then. Honor doesn't protect itself. It must be designed, like a protocol, like a warning no one can ignore. After that day at the mall, Amara never looked at America the same. She didn't rebel, didn't scream. She chose to walk into the system, to understand it, then dismantle it from within. At 17, she enlisted. Not to fight, but to survive in a way they would have to acknowledge. Every lap in the rain, every burn in Syria's desert, every night triaging 3 deaths in a row, hardened her like forged steel. When asked why she served, she simply said, "Because I refuse to be unseen." She rose in rank, not by luck, but by staying a step ahead of every system, including building a protocol no one believed was necessary, until it saved her life. And as the sound of helicopters approached from afar, she knew. The system was about to do what the whole country would have to witness. The Pentagon had once doubted her. A black major from New Jersey. No political ties, no sponsors. But Amara never needed anyone behind her. She stood alone, like she had in the shelling of Kobani. The presentation for Protocol 73 took place in a room full of generals. She pointed to the stats. Hundreds of wrongful detainments of black service members marked under review. One general scoffed. "You're saying our system's broken?" Amara didn't blink. Not the system. The people who run it, and they never saw us as part of it. No applause followed her speech, but 3 months later, Protocol 73 was approved. And now, on a blood-stained highway, that system was arriving. On time. This time, no one dared pull the plug. The patrol car went silent as the 4th black SUV arrived. No sirens, no plates, but its presence made the air thick. Door opened. Polished shoes stepped out. Then a man in a dark suit. Sunglasses, no visible badge, but every move oozed authority. The 2 officers exchanged looks, for the first time realizing they no longer controlled the situation. The man walked straight to Amara, still cuffed, blood drying on her forehead. He nodded. She nodded back. No words, but the recognition between them was as clear as fingerprints. A voice rang through an earpiece the police couldn't hear. "Target confirmed. Response level, priority 1. And the air shifted, not through force but with the weight of true power, the kind that doesn't need guns to make an entire system tremble. Officer Dalton took a step back as the man in the suit held up his federal ID. No shouting, no explanation, just one look. And Dalton realized he had gone too far. "Release her." The voice was calm, low, not threatening, but it was a command. Dalton looked around. None of his usual allies, only people in black with gear on their arms and eyes cold as steel. "What is this?" Dalton asked, but no one answered. He had no one left on his side. The blood on Amara's forehead was drying, but her eyes burned, like a fire finally freed after years of suppression. When does a single look become a verdict? How many people have been judged, harmed, simply for not fitting someone else's expectation? Just as the cuffs snapped open, a deep, low rumble echoed in the distance. A convoy of unmarked, unlit military vehicles rolled in, like trained shadows. Tires halted just millimeters above the road. No noise, no waste. From the lead Humvee, a woman stepped down. Colonel's uniform. Storm-hardened face. Her eyes cut through the shield of arrogance on the two officers. "Major Johnson, report status." Her voice was sharp, clear, but carried a rare respect within the ranks. Amara stood up, still aching, and replied, "Illegally detained. No resistance. Currently under Priority 1 response." The colonel nodded and turned to Dalton and Harris. "You've just interfered with a rank far beyond your comprehension." And with that, a report was dispatched directly to the Pentagon. Within 12 minutes, it would reach Congress. A small, mobile screen was set up on site, compact, yet crystal clear. On it, a replay from a military-grade satellite showed the full incident. Amara pulled from her vehicle. Her head slammed into the hood. Blood. No resistance, no violation. An aerial view, uncut, unedited, unnarrated. Truth laid bare without needing a single voice to defend it. Dalton turned pale. Harris could barely lift his hands. The colonel said only one thing, cold enough to freeze the air. "You call this reasonable suspicion?" Amara stood tall, her gaze like a blade cutting through the breaths of those who once mocked her. No one could flip the narrative now. The evidence belonged to the entire system. Less than 2 hours after the encrypted footage was transmitted via Protocol 73, copies were in the hands of the Pentagon, the Department of Justice, and the National Response Coordination Center. An emergency meeting was convened at 2:17 a.m. Washington time. High-ranking officials, once silent before dozens of anonymous complaints, were now forced to speak. This time, the victim was no longer invisible. Amara filed no lawsuit. She requested no settlement. She simply submitted a brief report. "I'm not asking for sympathy. I demand this system remember what it did. From Atlanta to Chicago, from Denver to D.C. The local police departments began receiving orders to audit arrest procedures involving military personnel over the past 5 years. A system once thought unshakable was now cracking from within." Amara's name landed on the Georgia governor's desk at 06:42 a.m., attached to the headline, "National Level Response, Violation of Military Detainment Protocol." Before 9 a.m., an internal email hit the Savannah mayor's office. The subject line was simple: "Prepare for hearing." Every frame of footage, every data log, every touch of cold handcuffs on her skin was now indisputable evidence. No more hiding behind phrases like misunderstanding or procedural error. Amara, with the dried scar on her temple, gave no public speech. She let the system speak its own guilt, layer by layer, person by person, from once untouchable positions. When Congress called for an emergency session, the name Johnson became a political shockwave. Shortly after, a classified document was leaked. It would drag down even bigger names, people once thought to stand above the law. That afternoon, an anonymous file appeared in the Department of Justice's internal system with a chilling subject line: Archive 73, What They Did, What They Erased. Over 700 pages, nearly 200 cases. Each line held a name, a time, a recorded statement, a video clip cut off mid-scene. And 17 cases had something in common. All victims were black military personnel wrongfully detained, then silenced. Dalton and Harris weren't unique. They were just 2 gears in a machine designed to erase its own tracks. One email from a senior officer read, "If there's no footage, then it's their fault, not ours." A nation built on law, but now those laws were laid bare like rotting pages. And the one who leaked the data was someone no one expected, someone from their own ranks. The news spread like wildfire through drought-stricken grass. That night, Amara Johnson appeared on national screens. Not in interviews, not through speeches. Just a 26-second clip. Her head slammed onto the hood, blood flowing, and her silence intact. with one line in white over black. Major Amara Johnson. Did not resist. Did not survive by luck. She was prepared. Social media exploded. Justice for Amara Nashwar Protocol. Shot not, invisible, flooded timelines. Veterans from across the country posted photos in uniform, ID held high, with the message, "I could be next." The once indifferent press shifted, no longer asking, "What did she do?" but, "How many times have we let this happen again?" When a major network aired the clip just before the national evening news, protests began. But this time, they were led by people in uniform. The next morning, an unmarked envelope was left at Amara's apartment door. Inside, a check for $2 million and a non-disclosure agreement. No apology, no explanation, just money, and an offer to vanish. An hour later, the phone rang. A deep, familiar male voice. "We can restore your reputation, make you a federal advisor, but this needs to end here." Amara stared at the agreement, said nothing. Then she tore it in half, placed it on the stove, and set it alight. Ash swirled upward, caught in her gaze, cold, clear, unyielding. She didn't need a title. She didn't need their money. She needed the truth to exist. At that moment, an anonymous threat appeared in her inbox. This time, there was no offer, only an ultimatum. 3 days after Amara rejected all hush-money offers, an anonymous recording arrived at the newsroom of a local station. In it, a deep, tired, almost trembling male voice. "I used to be Officer Dalton's partner. We called it the night hunt." A heavy breath. They weren't looking for criminals. They looked for the weak, the powerless, the ones who didn't know who to call when slammed to the ground. The man identified himself as John Lewis, a former officer who left the force after refusing to join one training takedown. "I've been silent too long, but she shouldn't have to carry this alone." The audio was broadcast on national television less than 12 hours later. Amara didn't appear on talk shows, didn't hold press conferences. Instead, she appeared in a quiet video, filmed in the room where her father once taught her to disassemble a weapon and stay silent under provocation. She looked directly into the camera. Not angry, not shouting, just an eerie calm. "I don't need to be honored. I need those who were wrongly arrested, silenced, to rise and speak." She launched a legal fund called Invisible No More. Within the first 72 hours, 27 old cases were submitted for reinvestigation. Veterans, retired officers, lawyers, even judges began stepping forward to support her. You wonder, can one scar and one unfiltered truth shake a system once deemed untouchable? Yes, if you've ever been dismissed, ever made to be silent. No, if you still believe justice always favors the strong. Three weeks after the incident, in a special hearing before the U.S. Senate, a 92-second video was played for hundreds of lawmakers, generals, veterans, and media outlets nationwide. No music, no narration, just footage of Amara, dragged out, head slammed, handcuffed, and standing back up. The room fell into absolute silence. No coughing, no pens scribbling. Within 6 hours, the hashtag #ProtectOurSoldiers trended #1 across the country. Military academies began reviewing their cooperation protocols with local law enforcement. Some TV networks paused entertainment programming to broadcast the original video, uncut, unblurred. For the first time in years, a black soldier became the face of justice. Not for heroism, but for daring to survive. And just when things seemed to peak, a request reached Amara, from the very man who had slammed her head against the hood. Amara entered the glass room on the 17th floor of the FBI's Atlanta office. No uniform, no security. Oh, only the silver ring. What saved her, and what now rattled the nation. Sitting across from her was Officer Dalton. No badge, no power, just a man with lowered eyes and reddened cheeks. "I asked to see you." he said, his voice hoarse. Not to excuse myself, but to admit it. Amara didn't respond immediately. She stared at him, not with hatred, but not with pity either. Dalton pulled a USB drive from his pocket and placed it on the table like it weighed more than the gun he once wore. This has everything. What I did, what I saw, what they made me hide. The room fell silent, but not the silence of fear. It was the stillness before a storm. Inside that USB was the architecture of a power network never before named. Dalton lifted his head. For the first time, he didn't look away. "I was wrong," he said. "No rush, no stumble. And I want to say that to you before someone twists it." The USB was plugged in. The screen lit up with dozens of folders, each a name, a recorded call, a camera conveniently disabled. Some clips showed secret meetings, senior officers in suits sipping coffee while profiling potential targets. "We called it risk optimization," Dalton said, "but really, it was hunting." Amara said nothing. She didn't have to. Her gaze was the verdict. Dalton placed a shaking hand on the table. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just don't want to teach my kid to bow like I did." When the USB's contents reached the Department of Justice, the names weren't just cops anymore. They were politicians. Their names flashed across the screen: senators, governors, former intelligence directors, once thought untouchable. Each name linked to a buried case, one dismissed for lack of evidence, another scrubbed from headlines overnight. Dalton's USB wasn't just evidence. It was a map of a power system built on silence and fear. Amara left the FBI building at 3:08 a.m. No statement, no wave. But the image of her descending the steps, silver ring glinting under the floodlights, spread across the country. A soldier, no longer fighting with weapons but with memory and truth. Tomorrow morning she would do the final thing: step onto the national hearing podium, before the people, before history. In the nationally televised hearing, Amara took the podium with the calm of someone who had survived every form of violence, war, prejudice, and silence. She didn't cry. She didn't read a speech. She simply raised her hand, parted her hair, and revealed the thin scar at her temple. "This scar doesn't make me weak," she said. "It proves I didn't back down, and I don't want to be the last one to carry one." The entire chamber rose, not for her rank, not for her medals, but for the truth she now embodied. To millions who had once been made invisible, Amara Johnson had become the voice they never had. If this story made you feel seen, like this video, share it and subscribe to the channel to help spread the truth. Because justice doesn't arrive on its own. It needs people like you, who won't scroll past, who won't look away.